Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
We're glad you're here with us today. And in the next couple of programs, we're going to be talking about our literature unit for the month of August. Just in time because the month of August is about over and September is just around the corner. So you're all getting ready for a new semester of school. So we're going to talk about a featured novel that was published way back in 1854, I believe. It's entitled North and South, and it's by the author Elizabeth Gaskell.
That's right. It's a great book. She is a good author. She was kind of interesting. She was very independent for a lady at that period of time. She wrote a lot about Victorian life and what it was like to be in Victorian England. This is her best book. She's written some others. All of her books have been turned into TV series. So if you're interested, I suggest you take a look. North and South is very popular. It was turned into a TV series in 2004 and has Richard Armitage as Mr. Thornton, who is considered to be quite handsome by the ladies. And then the woman is played by Daniela Denby-Ashe. And I don't know her so well, but she is frequently on British TV and had a big part in the EastEnders, for those of you who like British comedy. She was wonderful too. Anyway, it's a great series. There are 4 parts to it. And so I would watch, what I would suggest is to watch the TV miniseries first, and you can get copies of it, and then go to the book. Because one of the things that Elizabeth does is she actually tries to mimic the way they talked in the town of Milton. And they weren't educated people. They were the lower classes who worked in the cotton mill. And sometimes I would read a line and I'd think, what are they trying to say? And since it's my language, English, you'd think it would be easier. But it's still worth a read. You'll learn a lot about the people of that time, what they believed, the kind of struggles they went through. Life was hard during that period of industrialization.
Exactly. So this is a novel entitled North and South, and it was published way back in 1854 about life at that time in a town in northern England by the name of Milton. So let's get to it. Let's summarize our featured novel for today, for the month of August. Let's read the first part of our lesson right now.
In mid-19th century England, Margaret Hale, a young lady, lives with her parents in the idyllic countryside town of Helston in the south of England. They are educated and have an upper-class family background, but are no longer wealthy. Her father abruptly declares that he's had a religious crisis of conscience and can no longer work as a minister. Mr. Hale sacrifices his family's peaceful life in Helston and moves them to Milton, a northern industrial town where he works as a private tutor. Milton is full of pollution and noise, and this makes Margaret's mother terminally ill. At first, Margaret feels contempt for the working-class employees. Over time, though, she sympathizes with the plight of the workers and their struggling families, many of whom become ill due to dangerous working conditions in the mills. She has less sympathy for Mr. Thornton, a resident mill owner, and one of her father's students. He had a difficult childhood, but became prosperous through diligent work, and believes he should pay salaries that reflect the economy. Margaret, however, thinks bosses have a moral duty to pay workers generously. The workers' union goes on strike to protest a reduction in wages, and a riot erupts outside Mr. Thornton's home. Margaret shields him from pebbles thrown by the crowd and gets knocked unconscious when one strikes her on the head. Realizing he loves her, Mr. Thornton proposes marriage to Margaret, but she indignantly refuses. Fairly soon, though, Mr. Thornton begins to support his workers by using newer, safer equipment and providing lunch for them.
Okay, let's get to it. Let's discuss the contents of our lesson for today. We're summarizing the book North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. That's our featured novel for today. The nice thing about this novel is that it was published a long time ago, so you can probably get a free copy of it online somewhere if you want to read it yourself. So the title is North and South, an exploration of class struggles. So we've got different classes, especially in England there. There's the working class, there's the aristocracy, etc., etc., the educated class, the skilled people, etc. These are all different classes, and they conflict with each other from time to time. And in this book, we get an exploration of those struggles between the classes. So let's take a look at the first paragraph here. This is when it takes place in mid-19th century England, which would be, around 1850 or so. Margaret Hale, a young lady, lives with her parents in the idyllic countryside town of Helston in the south of England. Okay, so that pretty much tells us where this story begins to take place.
Yeah, it's a beautiful southern town. They're not aristocracy, but they've been well educated, all of them. They haven't had to work. The father, Mr. Hale, had a job as a minister, but that was considered to be a job for middle class and upper middle class people. So they are very educated. They know not just about the Bible, because he's a minister, but they also know about philosophy and history, and that's the kind of education they received back then. Whereas the lower class, they were lucky if they could even write their name. Most of them couldn't read. So they were educated, and it says here they're no longer wealthy. Yeah, there wasn't any money that was passed down from either the father's side or the mother's side. So her father, it says, this is Margaret's dad, he abruptly declares that he's had a religious crisis of conscience and can no longer work as a minister. If you do something abruptly, it's like you do it so suddenly that everybody's really surprised. It's kind of unexpected. He kind of shocks his friends back there in Helston. He hangs out with a lot of other middle-class ministers, and he just doesn't like the leadership from his church. He still believes in God. He likes the Bible, but he isn't quite sold on the leadership there. So he decides to be honorable, and as an honorable man, he feels like he can no longer be a minister if he's disagreeing with, his supervisors, you could say. So he quits because he's had a crisis of conscience. If you're expected to do something that you believe is wrong or isn't right, you could say that you're having a difficult time with your conscience. You don't feel good about it. And so that's his religious crisis of conscience. He doesn't feel good about what he's been asked to do, and he can no longer work as a minister. But let me explain, back then, if a minister suddenly quit and people knew he didn't support his own church, he would then be kind of an outcast, meaning people would no longer associate with him who had been friendly with him before. So there really was no other way that they could survive. They had to leave that town.
Okay, so yes, he had a conscience there, sometimes we say. He had a crisis of conscience, so he abruptly, quit the church there. Again, as you said, abruptly means quickly or suddenly.
Yeah.
Hey, we were going to have a successful meeting, but it abruptly ended. Somebody got mad and stormed out, so the meeting ended abruptly. So here the father abruptly declares that, hey, I've got something wrong with this church. They're doing something that I can't agree with, or I don't agree with the scriptures or something like that, so I just can't be a minister anymore. I've got to seek a different kind of career. And Mr. Hale sacrifices his family's peaceful life in Helston and moves them to Milton, a northern industrial town where he works as a private tutor. So here we've got the verb to sacrifice. That means you give something up, and it usually requires some kind of hardship, okay?
Yeah.
You might sacrifice your career in banking because you're getting married or something, and you need to be a mother and stuff like that, so you sacrifice your career. Maybe you can come back to it later. This probably happens with a lot of professional women when they decide to have a family and children and stuff like that. You have to make a lot of sacrifices, or your parents make a lot of sacrifices for you so you can have a good education or something.
So it's really giving up something that you value for something that you think is even more important or more worthy of your time. So he does. He sacrifices his family's peaceful life and moves them up north, where they have a different accent, they have a different way of life. They're mostly people that are lower class and just merchant class. These people have to work for a living. And Margaret Hale's family really didn't. Margaret's never worked in her life. She spent all this time learning, nice social graces back then. The women learned how to dance. They were well educated, so they could talk to men and somebody would want to marry them. The problem is, though, that Margaret, her dad doesn't have a lot of money, so part of getting married back then was that a man would ask you to marry him, but your family would give that man some money, right? A dowry, it was called D-O-W-R-Y. She doesn't have any money, but she's beautiful. So that's a positive for Margaret Hale. But back then, people didn't get to marry for love very often. They just had to marry for practicality, for practical reasons. So, Margaret's in a city that she's not happy to be in. There's really dark skies, and because there are all these machines working night and day, and it's just kind of a filthy city, very dirty.
Yeah, a number of locations in northern England were industrial at one point. Sheffield, Manchester, Leeds, and stuff like that. We've got Milton here. It's probably not a big city. It's just a small town, but they've got factories and stuff there. And he's going to work there as a private tutor. So he's having a change of careers. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's take a break right now and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hello, my name is Shelby. 现在中文讲解介绍一本书，讲述了19世纪一对不同背景的恋人，及分析了工业革命的英国。第一段先介绍背景。第一句，女主角玛格丽特原来是住在乡村小镇。idyllic 是形容词，表示田园风光的。An idyllic scene 一派田园风光，暗示原生家庭背景是有教养。他们受过教育，上流社会，但是不再富有。第三句，他的父亲突然宣布他有宗教上的良知危机。副词 abruptly 突然地，相当于 unexpectedly suddenly， 不过呢程度更强烈。conscience 良心，我问心无愧，就可以说 my conscience is clear。他没办法再继续当牧师。No longer 不再，相当于 no more 或者是 not anymore。A minister 牧师和 pastor P-A-S-T-O-R 都是指基督教上面的牧师。天主教会用 priest P-R-I-E-S-T 来作为神父。他爸爸牺牲平静生活，搬到工业小镇当一名私人的教师。Sacrifice 牺牲，后面加名词表示牺牲什么东西。当做名词的时候表示祭品，例如说 The cow is the sacrifice to the god， 牛是祭品。逗点之后是关系子句，由 where 所引导，修饰先行词 town。 Where 相当于 in which， 表示在那个城里面。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about the novel North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. It's a great look at Victorian England in kind of the mid-1800s. So when we left you, we were talking about Margaret Hale, who is the young lady in the story. And her father has quit his job as a minister, and they have to leave their beautiful town of Helston that's in the south. It's just gorgeous. The weather's good. They have clean air there. And they move to a northern industrial town where it's dirty, there's pollution, the weather is different, it's cold. But they have to leave Helston, and her father tries to get a little bit of part-time work as a tutor. He is tutoring people who come to him, and he's trying to teach them about philosophy, things like that. So Milton is full of pollution and noise, and this makes Margaret's mother terminally ill. Now, back then, we didn't have the medical education we have today, but if you read about the mother, you can probably guess that she has some sort of lung disease. She gets very weak. Maybe she even had cancer, we're not really sure, but they wouldn't have diagnosed it back then. But, you know, the pollution and noise just make her mother even sicker than she was before. Terminally just means someone who doesn't have a chance to recover. They're definitely going to die from whatever illness they have.
Yep, terminal means the end, so that means you're going to die, basically. So Margaret's probably very upset about that. So at the beginning, or at first, Margaret feels contempt for the working class employees. Now, in the sentence, we have the word contempt, and basically that just means you don't really like anybody. You have a dislike for someone. Be careful here because contempt is a noun. I have contempt for you. I don't like what you did, for example.
Yeah, you can't say Margaret contempts other people.
No.
It's not a verb. Yeah, she does feel she definitely feels more educated than they are. But she tries to help as well. She takes, some of the food in her home and tries to visit some of the lower classes. But they're not happy with that either. They feel like she thinks she's better than they are. So over time, though, and she's there for a while before she starts to actually like Milton. She hates the weather. She hates how dirty it is. And it says over time, and our feelings can change over time, she sympathizes with the plight or the difficulty that the workers are going through in their struggling families. She makes best friends with a couple of them. If you sympathize with somebody, you look at someone's situation and you express your sympathy towards them. You feel bad about the situation they're in. And plight is really a word that we use more in written English rather than spoken. It just means somebody's unfortunate situation, a difficult time they're going through. So, yeah, many of the families, these working class families, they're working in dangerous conditions in the mills. These mills, of course, are producing cotton fabric, and there are little pieces of cotton in the air everywhere, and it goes into their lungs, and they actually die young of the cotton lung.
Wow, imagine that,
Yeah.
the sacrifice you have to make so that other people can wear comfy clothes.
And children work in the factories back then, remember?
Conditions were bad there, so of course we're talking about the plight of the poor there, or the plight of the workers and their working conditions. And she has less sympathy for Mr. Thornton, a resident mill owner and one of her father's students. So I guess you could say she has contempt for Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
She doesn't have any sympathy for him. She has sympathy for the workers, but not for Mr. Thornton. She does not feel sorry for him at all because he owns the mill and he lives there. He's a resident there, so he owns the mill, but he also just happens to be a student of her father. Remember, her father is a tutor.
Mr. Thornton had to leave school very young when he was I think 12, 13, because his father died. So he never finished his education, and he wants to learn more. So he goes and sits with Mr. Hale, and they go through lessons. Mr. Thornton's interested in Margaret Hale because she's beautiful, but boy, Margaret Hale does not like him. He had a difficult childhood. His father died, but became prosperous, meaning he made some money through diligent work. He worked very, very hard, and he supports his mother. You're prosperous if you're successful in terms of material items. You have money. Doesn't necessarily mean you're spiritually blessed or you have emotional blessings. Just means you're doing well financially.Yep,
and prosperity is the noun. Prosperous is the adjective.
And
so
prosper is the verb. We have a verb too.
That's right, to prosper.
Yeah.
Live long and prosper, indeed,
yes.
like Spock says. But in any case, yes, he became prosperous through hard, diligent work, and he believes he should pay salaries that reflect the economy. So, yeah, if the economy's doing well, I'll pay you more. If the economy's not doing so well, I'll pay you less. So that's his philosophy of business, and Margaret thinks they have the moral duty to pay workers generously. Okay, you may agree with that or disagree with that, but in any case, Margaret thinks, hey, you're the boss. You should help out those workers. After all, they're making sacrifices for you.
The workers, of course, get together and they try to form a union so they have more power and they go on strike, which means they stop working because they have demands that their boss isn't meeting. They want more money. And they do this to protest a reduction in wages. And then a riot erupts outside Mr. Thornton's home. If you protest, it just means you are really upset about something. Typically, it's something that's happening with your government, and you want to express your opposition to whatever's happening. We still have a lot of protests that happen today. So they meet outside of Thornton's home. There's a riot, and Margaret happens to be at Mr. Thornton's home visiting the mom, I think. And she tries to shield him or protect him from rocks, pebbles or small rocks, that are being thrown by the crowd. They didn't realize Margaret was going to come out. She's very brave. She's not like a typical woman back then. She's not afraid, and she wants to go out there and get Mr. Thornton back inside. She can see the crowd's going to hurt him. But she gets hit by one of the rocks, and it knocks her unconscious. If you're unconscious, something happens, and it's like you're asleep, but you're not dead, right? Somebody isn't able to respond or hear anything you say. So she's knocked unconscious, and that's when Mr. Thornton's really upset because he loves her, and in order to, to apologize, he goes ahead and proposes to Margaret, but Margaret doesn't want a proposal from him, although he's very highly regarded by the other women there. They think he's pretty handsome and he has wealth.
It's a romantic story, so he proposes to her, will you marry me? But she doesn't like him, so she indignantly refuses. So if you're indignant, that means you are very stubborn in your opinion there, and you're kind of angry, and you're just going to say, no way, I'm not going to marry you. You are totally not my type. I refuse. This is ridiculous. Why would you propose to me? I feel greatly insulted.
Yeah, it's how dare you think I would want to marry you just because I tried to save your life. So fairly soon, Mr. Thornton begins to support his workers by using newer, safer equipment, and he also starts providing lunch for them, which actually helps nourish those workers a lot. A lot of this is, of course, Margaret's influence on him. Okay, guys, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher one more time, and then we'll be back to wrap up.
他们搬到这里之后，第二段第一句，这里充满污染、噪音，这使他母亲病入膏肓。句为 terminally ill，terminally 晚期的 ，terminally ill 就指病入膏肓的。去掉字为 ly，terminal 当形容词，终点的 the terminal station 终点站，公车总站或者是航空站也叫做 terminal。第二句。起初呢，玛格丽特对工人十分的藐视 ，contempt 藐视 ，contempt for something 对什么的藐视。第三句，不过随着时间，他同情工人的困境 ，sympathize 同情 ，sympathize with the plight 是困境 ，he was in a sad plight 表示他处境困难。后半句。 其中许多人因为工厂危险的工作条件而生病。Many of whom 形容词子句的主词 whom 是指前面的 workers and their families， 加上数量代名词 many of whom 表示他们当中许多人。要提醒的是，不要受到中文影响，写成 many of them。句尾地方副词 in the mills， mill 工厂，A paper mill 造纸厂。另外，形容人饱受风霜，也可以用 mill 来表示。He has gone through the mill， 照字面是他历经过工厂，就是他饱经风霜。后来，玛格丽特遇见桑顿，第4句，他是一个 a resident mill owner， 常住的工厂老板。Resident 居民 the local residents 当地居民，这里拿来当形容词，表示常住的，所以长期居民就是 the resident population。桑顿认为要支付反映经济状况的工资，然而玛格丽特认为老板要慷慨。第3段，有一天工会罢工，抗议减薪 goes on strike 罢工。Reduction 是缩减 Reduction in wages 表示工资减少。后半句爆发了一场暴动 Riot 暴动 Erupt 爆发，相当于 burst out 或者是 explode E-X-P-L-O-D-E 劳资产生冲突，结果第2句玛格丽特保护桑顿先生，动词片语 shield A from B， shield 当作动词的时候，保护加上 from something 表示保护什么，远离哪里。他还失去意识。第3句意识到爱着玛格丽特啊，那个 realizing 是省略连接词 because 以及主词 he， 动词加上 ing 变成分词构句，但是他愤慨地拒绝了。indignantly 愤怒的，愤慨的。例如说，他气愤地回答 He answered indignantly。 不过很快的，桑顿先生开始支持工人用新的设备，并供应午餐。凭借什么什么行为，我们就用 by 加 v-ing 来表达。所以最后一句说 by using and providing 提供接着会发生什么，我们明天继续关心。以上是今天的讲解，谢谢收听。
That's day 1 of our literature unit, guys. Join us for our next program when we talk about more of the plot of the book North and South. It's really a fun story. It's one of my favorite books of all time. We're glad you joined us. We hope you'll come back soon. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.